light that never comes. I chase the sun. Waiting on the light that never comes. Waiting on the light that never comes. Waiting for the light that never comes. I chase the sun. Waiting for the light that
Hey guys, welcome to week 4 of Audio Production Techniques. I appreciate you guys coming out and hanging out this evening. Sorry about the small delay at the beginning of class. Just had a couple things that I was trying to nail down before we got class started this evening. So a couple things, let's see. Well, obviously you guys know you have your project that'll be due this Sunday evening at midnight. So make sure you guys are plugging away at this and working on it throughout the week. You're going to find yourself up against a really difficult position if you wait till Sunday to get this thing really nailed down and dialed in. What we're going to do this evening is we're going to take you through some things that you want to consider doing for your project. We're going to wrap up and get our baseline taken care of. Last position we stayed, we were just kind of noodling around with that. So before we actually jump into that, I actually want to take you guys again and just remind you of where you're getting your materials. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because it's been covered in each week at the very beginning of the week. And you can also find that in each of the archives, which remember the archives will be located in your announcements section, which is located on your dashboard. So I provided those links. And again, this particular video that you're watching and attending right now will be archived as well. It takes usually about 24 hours for me to get them up. I've been able to successfully get them up a little bit quicker. So typically I can probably get them turned around in about 12 hours if there's no glitches in the rendering process. So before we actually get dialed in and started, does anybody have any questions about anything that was either covered last week, or maybe they just have general questions? This would be a good time. And I'm going to stop a couple times throughout the session and actually do the same thing. I'm going to make sure that we have time for questions. And then if I don't actually get to your question, just save it. And at the end of our session, we'll have another opportunity for questions as well. So any questions? Cameron, you're asking about, I believe you're asking about the actual dialing in your tempo. So if you're talking about making sure you're getting everything to grid, take a look. Last week's archive would probably be your best archive. Unfortunately, I just don't have time to cover that in detail the way I did last week. Last week, we spent a good 35 minutes on that. And in fact, I used an example that was ambiguous or difficult to get it to line up as well. So if you take a look at last week's video, there's a really good section in there. You'll see that we used, oh shoot, who did we use? Pop artist Christina Aguilera. We used the Christina Aguilera files, which, so if you just reference that portion of last week's archive, that should take care of it for you. And the short answer of it is, Cameron, if you want to nail down and take a look for any videos that you find concerning Beat Detective. So if you want to Google that, that's fine as well. I know there's a couple of videos on YouTube, but if you want direct answers for that, take a look at last week's archive, and that should be able to nail down that for you. Again, if it was only like a quick 5-minute process, I'd go ahead and do that for you. But we spent a good 35 minutes covering that last week. Yeah, absolutely, no problem. Good question either way, though, because it's going to be important. It's going to be one of the actually most important things to getting yourself set up. You know what? Actually, Cameron, I tell you what, I bet you anything somebody else in the class has the same question. So why don't we just go ahead and nail that down right now? So let me go see if we can find some files we can work with. I'll go ahead and do a quick repeat. I may not go into as much detail as I did last week, but that's all right. Let's take a look here and see what we got. So inside my music folder, we'll go to my artist remix files, and let's see if we got somebody here. Here's the Christina Aguilera files that we were using last week. Notice it actually already gives you the tempo information, but in the event that you didn't know the tempo information, you would actually need to figure that out. Let me see if we got something else. We'll try this. Take a look at this. She Wants Revenge. These files right here, there's no tempo information, so we're actually going to use that as our example. So what I'll do right now is I'll go ahead and create a brand new session. Not really going to be concerned about the way I'm saving it with bit depth and sample rate. We do want to make sure it's stereo mixed. Since I'm going to be creating a new session here, we'll go ahead and we'll copy this information because I'm going to use that in the name of this. I'll set it to my desktop. And there we go. We got the name. And I'll call this example. Well, actually, all right, cool. So you can see we've got a blank session. I'll go ahead and go back and import those files into the session. So again, I've got that underneath my music folder. Here's the artist remix files. The band, which I love this song, by the way. This band called She Wants Revenge, Take the World. It's a very, very cool song. Let's see here. We'll get all these files over into our session. We'll go ahead and copy them as well. Now it automatically saves back to my audio files folder, which is fine. That's the default for where all your files should be saved, is back in the audio files folder for the current session itself. So now the process you're going to see here is notice while the files are importing, notice what the tempo is in my session. It's basically the standard tempo that most DAWs will open up to, and that's 120 beats per minute. But chances are your song is probably not going to be in exactly 120 beats per minute. So we're going to need to figure out what the tempo of this song is. Now, I'll take a moment and I'll show you the old school way, in a way that when I first started using Pro Tools, I'll show you the way I started doing it, and it's a really painstaking process. But if we were to create a click track right now and play this back, you're going to hear that the actual song itself is not going to be in tempo with our session. So we'll go to our track menu and we'll create a click track. And on this click track, I'm just going to turn it up. That way we can really hear the click track being played over top of the music. And I'll play this back for you. This is going to sound pretty bad. You're not going to really enjoy this. And in fact, when you start working with a client, if they're trying to work on remix material, the method that I'm about to show you is typically probably not the way you'd want to work with a client. And I'll show you why, because it's going to be very painstaking process. But we'll go ahead. We'll just play the files back so you can hear. First of all, play it back without the click track running. I just want you to basically get an idea what the song sounds like, and then we're going to play it back with the click track. Now, the click track is basically an auditory example of Pro Tools Grid. So then it's basically a way of hearing the grid inside of Pro Tools. Let's go ahead and just listen to the song for a moment. That way you get an idea of what's going on. And actually, I'm going to let you hear the whole song, but I actually want you to just reference the drums. So we're going to just show the drum track right now. We'll blow it up real big. That way we can follow along, because now you guys can see the grid. So you're actually going to hear the grid as well as be able to see it. So let's play it back and take a listen. All right, cool. You guys get the idea. Really cool track. But if we go back, I'm going to solo out. So we're just listening to just the drums. And let's tab up to the very first drum beat. So we actually, turn tab to transient on. This little icon right here, little arrow pointing to a waveform. And then hit tab. It'll take you right up to the very first drum transient. I'm going to flip around here and actually let's take a look at, let's make sure that the click track is turned up. It is. Make sure it's soloed. It is. Let's turn it on and let's actually listen to this beat with the click track. And you can obviously see the transients aren't lining up with the grid. So if we play it back. Okay, so now the old school method of actually trying to figure this out was you would go down here, you'd turn the conductor off. And you could take this and you could try to slide around the grid or try to figure out where the downbeat is like this. Now, what this really means is you're going to sit here and annoy the heck out of your client, because you're sitting here and you're going to be trying to adjust the actual tempo while it's playing back, and it's probably going to take you about a half hour, and you're going to drive yourself crazy and you're going to drive the client crazy. In other words, like all I'm doing is just really adjusting the grid here, but it's really not doing anything as far as being able to find the tempo. Now, there's a couple different ways that we could try to figure out the tempo. If you you could actually tap on the T key. Once this field is highlighted, now, in fact, let me turn on KeyCaster so you guys will be able to see KeyCaster. Let me hide Pro Tools real quick. Now, KeyCaster turned on, you'll be able to see whatever keys I'm actually going to be playing here. Let me make sure it's fired up and working correctly. Cool. So now, if you're inside of Pro Tools and the little tempo field is highlighted here, notice I've turned the conductor off. If you ever want to have tempo changes in your song, you have to have the conductor on, and that'll allow you to insert tempo changes. When he's turned off, you can actually slide the tempo up or down, but you will only have one tempo in your session. So now when this field, see how the tempo field is highlighted? When that's highlighted, you can actually hit your T key, 1, 2, 3, 4, and notice that every time you hit it, it's going to then try to figure out the tempo information. So this could be one way to try to figure this out. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to turn this off. That way I don't have to actually hear the MIDI metronome, but we could still adjust the tempo. So we'll play it back. There. And I could go back and then turn this back on. Let's go back to the beginning of our session. Tab up the first downbeat. Now, it didn't actually find the downbeat here, but if we listen, I think we got pretty close. We'll turn the old MIDI metronome back on. So we didn't actually find the downbeat. Notice this is still a really painstaking way of figuring out what the tempo is. A much easier way to do this would be to use tab to transient and shift at the same time. So hold shift and then hit tab, and then tab up till you have a 1-bar loop. This should be a 1-bar loop. Now, the way we're going to know is we're going to listen to it. What I'm going to listen to is I'm going to listen for the turnaround section here. And if it turns around correctly, then I know I've done it right. First of all, let's do it wrong. I'm going to put this off slightly, off axis. Let me be off by, I don't know, a beat and a half. And you'll hear that it's off. In other words, when it goes to loop around, it's not going to sound right. Well, listen here. Let me actually turn the metronome off real quick. Now notice if you're nodding your head along with the beat, you'll hear that it actually gets off, okay? So you'll hear just if your head was nodding to the beat itself, you're gonna find that there's a small hiccup there and we're turning around at the wrong point. So nodding your head, 3, 1, 1, 2. So that's definitely not correct. If I hold shift and tab, if we get over here, let's try this now. 1, 2, 3, 1 measure, 1, 2, 3. Again, I don't have a full 2 measures, so it doesn't matter whether you pick a 1-bar measurement or a 2-bar measurement, as long, or even an 8-bar measurement, as long as you pick an accurate measurement, because you're going to need to tell Pro Tools what it is you have. Let's try something along the lines of this: 1, 2, 3, 1 measure, 1, 2, 3, 2 measures. I was off by 1 beat. Let's try it again: 1, 2, 3, 1 measure, 1, 2, 3, 2 measures. Okay, so you can hear we have a perfect 2-bar measures. But what does Pro Tools think it is? Pro Tools thinks that we have 2 bars and 317 ticks. And that's not going to be right. By the way, you need to actually have the conductor turned on in order to use this feature. So now I have to make my selection all over again. Kind of a pain in the butt, but we'll go ahead and we'll get it nailed down. We'll get it dialed in. Shift tab, I believe we were somewhere in the neighborhood of here. If I have it wrong, we'll just select it. We'll try it out here. 1, 2, 3, 1 measure, 1, 2, 3, 2 measures. Yes, and I'm off by 1 beat. Shift tab again. That should be it right there. Let's try it out. 1, 2, 3, 1 measure, 1, 2, 3, 2 measures. All right, again, you can hear we got a hiccup going on. So that hiccup, that's not a good feature. We need to get rid of that. So let's try this one last time, and we'll be putting this to bed. I believe it was there. Let's just give it a listen. Your ear is going to let you know no matter what. 2, 3, 1 measure, 1, 2, 3, 2 measures. Okay, I've got a perfect 2 measures. So now we need to tell Pro Tools what this is. That's the feature of Identify Beat. Command I will bring up this window. If you don't remember where the quick key for it, that's all right. Take a look. You'll find it underneath your events menu, and there you have Identify Beat, as well as the quick key. Let's list the quick key for you there as well. All right. Now, this isn't bar 13. It actually could be, but it's actually the beginning of the song, or the beginning of the downbeat of the song. So we'll say it's bar 1. And if it's 2 measures long, what should the endpoint be? I'm throwing this out for the class. This is a question for everybody that's in attendance. So if I have a 2-bar selection, yeah, the endpoint is 3. It doesn't go into measure 3, but the back end, this little portion right here, meets up with the beginning of bar 3. So we need to basically just tell Pro Tools that should be bar 3. And then we look at the tempo, and it says here the tempo is 99.8754. Now, I happen to pretty much already know that Pro Tools is super, super accurate with its tempo information. I mean, what we need to do probably is really round up. So if we're going to round up, what should the tempo really be? 100 beats per minute. Let's go ahead and actually put that in. So I'll control-click this little diamond icon, but we actually have a selection base, so let's don't do that. In fact, let's go back to the very beginning of our session, and let's just tell the tempo, hey, in fact, let's undo our Identify Beat. Hit return, so we see that we're back at the very beginning of the session. And let's just tell Pro Tools, hey, this needs to be 100 beats per minute. Now, to test this out, what you want to do is you want to go up to the beginning of your session, make sure you're in grid mode, go to, we'll just select a 1-bar selection here, and I'll zoom in on it, Option F, and it looks like it's off slightly, so what I need to do is probably make a direct selection from bar 11, and we'll just say, hey, let's make it one bar even, and let's just take a listen to it. Remember, your ear is going to tell you whether it's working or not, so just use your ear. And remember, you want to make sure you have loop playback engaged. We're dead on. So let's go to the end of the song, because the end of the song is going to really let us know if it stays at that tempo throughout the entire song. If not, it'll get slightly off. And I can actually look at the waveform and I can see, looks like it actually might be dead on, but let's actually just give it a listen. Yeah, it's dead on. In fact, if I turn on the MIDI metronome again with this, you'll hear it's dead on. Okay, now what we just saw is one of the more important features of any DAW, because that's basically allowing you to lock up the entire song. Once you have the entire song locked up, here's where we get to do some creative editing. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but what I am going to do is I'm going to hijack this loop. There's one little loop in here. Command T will keep what I have as my selection and get rid of everything else. I'll bring this back to the beginning of my session, and we're going to duplicate this several times. I'm just going to do some fancy little edits. We'll leave the first one alone so you'll remember what the first one sounded like. In fact, let's do this. I'm going to consolidate that, Shift-Option-3, so we have a 4-bar selection. And I'll just do 1, 2, 3. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have fun with these real quick. I'm going to do some quick edits to this. I just want to show you that now that it's locked up, now that the grid's locked up, now you can basically take this apart and put it back together in a way that it wasn't originally created as. So for instance, if I want a double kick at the beginning of this, I'll just select it. Notice how it selects. If we zoom in a little bit on this, you'll see it selects the exact drum piece that we want. So if I just duplicate it and I play this back now, oops, sorry about that. Now I've got a double kick happening at the beginning of the loop. Let's turn the old metronome off. So again, it just gave a double kick, but it sounds like it's definitely in time, and it works. In fact, if you want to start creating stutter edits, we'll grab the snare, and we'll just go ahead and we'll duplicate it several times. So now we go to play this back. We've got the double kick with a bunch of extra snare hits. And this is how you're hearing a lot of these stutter edits that are happening in dance music. Once the grid's lined up, you can just take this apart and put it back together again in a way that was not originally created. For instance, let's take the back end of this. Let's slow it down. I'll make it do a quick record stop effect. We'll go down to Other. Actually, no, this will be found underneath Pitch Shift, Verify. And I just basically selected the last bar there. We'll render it. That's going to give it a record stop effect. If I wanted to do more of those little stutter edits, but I want it to sound more like a delay, I'll just make several duplications. I'll then consolidate them together and then create a fade out. And maybe we want to take this section and pitch this up. So we'll go to Audio Suite. Or maybe even, maybe I want to do some kind of a flange or lo-fi. Let's do some lo-fi on this one section. You can actually listen to this before you process it. I'm just grabbing things and processing, but if I want to hear what it's going to do to it, you can just go ahead and audition it here. That's not super lo-fi, so I may actually want to find something in a preset here. So if we go to presets and look under the factory settings, here's Digital Destruction. You can actually listen to it real quick. Cool, we'll render that, and maybe I'll just take some of those extra pieces, and then I'll take this lo-fi sound, I'll edit it out, and then just option drag it, or just copy it, Command C, and paste it to section, Command V. I'll put it there. I'll put it there. I'll put it there. And there. I'm basically just replacing that one drum sound in certain sections. Or maybe I could even do something like a quick reverse. We'll take this. We'll go underneath Audio Suite. We'll go to Other. I'll go down to Reverse. And we'll render it. So let's just give you a quick idea of everything that I just did first. It kind of gives you an idea. Actually, you know what? I don't like that reverse in that one section because remember, I already did an effect to that. So let's just listen to the original beat and then what I've already done. And a lot of this, remember, I just kind of did it on the fly without really even listening to it. So let's get an idea of what I just did. Okay, now none of that was possible without actually locking this information up with the tempo to begin with. So just a quick run through of how to do that. I really don't want to spend too much more time on it because I got a lot of other useful stuff I want to show you guys this evening. So hopefully, yeah, not a problem, Cameron. Hopefully that answered your question. If not, go back, take a look at last week's archive as well as this week's archive because this will now give you two different examples of identify beat and how to get your session to be locked up. If you want to go back and look at last week's, there's actually some additional weird errant problems with that session and the actual timing of every single different file. I really don't have time to go over that part, but it'll really kind of solidify things if you do go back and see that. And I believe that was at the beginning of last week's session as well, so you won't have to dig too far into the video. Coolio, does anybody else have any other questions before we dive into tonight's work? All right, coolio. Well, then let's go ahead and dive right in. So at the beginning of tonight, as we were getting started, I went ahead and I played back the original track for you guys. And now I want you guys to see kind of where we got so far. Last week, we actually added some loops. Cameron, unfortunately, I don't have time for that this evening. There's tons of other files that are all most of the files that you saw, they're either files that the bands themselves gave me, or I got them off of the website that I directed you guys to, indabamusic.com. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to push forward. I love to spend time showing you guys all kinds of stuff, but I'm going to show you guys some really cool stuff in tonight's session as well. So let me go ahead and make sure we push forward. Last week, what we did is we added some loops to our session, and we also showed you how to create your own drum loop. And then we started working on the bass line and using a virtual instrument to try to emulate their own bass line. And we didn't get too far because we kind of ran out of time. But you can see here, I started off with the very first measure of their bass line. I'll give you a quick rewind. We'll go back and we'll actually listen. I'm going to save my work as it is. Let's go back and actually take a look at what we've got done so far, which honestly, we've got a long ways to go. So that's one of the reasons why I want to push forward with tonight's materials. But we'll be able to wrap this up real nice and neat and let you guys see some really cool and interesting methodologies in doing remixes. So let's give a quick listen of what we did. Last week, I think I basically put in some loops and then we got rid of all the loops in lieu of using our own drum loop down here at the bottom. Let's go ahead and just take a listen and see where it is that we are so far in this session.
Now you don't know me, lightning above and a fire below me. You cannot catch me, cannot hold me. You cannot stop, much less control me. When the rains it pours, when the floodgates open, brace your shores. That pressure don't care when it breaks your doors. Say it's all you can take, better take some more. Cause I know what it's like to test me. Had my shoulders pressed with that weight, stood up strong in spite of that hate. Night gets dark just like the dawn. What don't kill you makes you more strong. I've been waiting for it so long.
All right, actually, guys, one thing I do want to do, and this actually does deal with the bass line, but there's a really cool stab that's going on throughout the song periodically, and I actually want to utilize that in the song. So it actually happens at the very beginning of the song. It's this very first stab. We're going to solo this out. Really cool little stab sound, but I'm noticing if I really wanted to introduce that stab sound, we could actually hijack that and actually give it our own little flavor. What do I mean by that? Well, let's go ahead and let's duplicate it out, and let's try pitching it down a little bit. So notice I'll go ahead and just play it back. That's its standard pitch, but if I go under my audio suite and I go to pitch shift and we pull up just our standard pitch shift, I want to take it down. Let's see, actually not the gain, the actual coarseness. Let's do coarse. Let's go down 2 semitones and listen to it. I render it out, and notice when I go to play the sound in next time, for instance, so here we've got this lead up coming in here. If I put it just right before it, and we have this pitch down effect, I'm looking here, making sure I've got it where I want it. I'm not going to use the entirety of it. I'm actually going to do that little stutter effect. Remember, because now that we have the grid locked up, I'm just going to take the beginning of it and duplicate it. And take a look at what we've done to it now. One thing I didn't like is I kind of overlapped it a little bit. Let's undo that and pull the original back out. And now you'll listen. I'll let you hear the original stab with our stab. So we can, again, just pull the original back out. Now we have the lower pitched one leading into the standard one. Listen to that with the actual drums, the drums that we added in. Let me get back down to my drums. Solo those out. We'll take a listen. This will be kind of cool. I think that you'll really dig this. Let's get a full 8 bars here selected. Actually, yeah, I'm at 8. We'll do 6 for right now. We'll take a listen. Basically gave it a stutter and just gave it an introduction to the original sound. Whoa, not what I meant to do there. Just highlight. In fact, let's get our grid resolution down just a bit. That way you can just hear the idea. Sounding like the stabs themselves are slightly off, and the reason for that is the timing of the way that stab happens. So to make it a little bit more accurate, what we could do is let's go into a higher grid resolution. Let's do something like a 64th note. And notice it's still leaving a little bit off there. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm actually going to undo any of the edits that you saw me do earlier. Let's get back to here's the lower pitched one. So I got the lower pitched one going into the original. And let's actually adjust that timing of this one here. So to do this, we're going to go into slip mode. And it just wasn't as accurate. The stab just wasn't hitting and landing where it should be. So let's trim up the beginning of that. Go back over into grid mode. Pull it back to where it should be. And let's get back down to 8th notes. Cool. And let's just use the first 8th notes section there. Actually, I lied. I want 16th notes. You'll see why here in a second. Okay, so notice here it still needs to be on grid. So let's get that on grid. And let's just trim away till we have a 16th note. And then just duplicate that going into this. So again, what we're going to do here is just go back so you can actually hear what we got going on. Give you just a little 2-bar section here. So we've got the lower pitch section here, which has 16th notes that go right over into the original. Okay, so basically all I did was I just gave it more of an intro. And that intro just kind of helps introduce it, and I thought actually made it just a little bit hipper than the original performance. If you go back and you listen to the original, then you get an idea of the way theirs sounded. Here, let me pull this back out. And these little small things are to me, you'll see, I'm going to start doing some of those small edits here with the vocals as well here in a second. Get the idea. It basically just helped to reinforce it and introduce that piece. So if I want to keep that, one of the easier things that I could do would actually be to just go ahead and cut that section out. That way I can use it wherever I want in the song itself. So just we'll put myself in one bar increments, and then I'll go back and I'll consolidate that. So notice here I've got a solid 2 bars of selection. We'll consolidate it, Shift Option 3, and that way anywhere I want this to happen in the song, I'll just move it and put it there. Like we can tell we want it to happen there, so then I just Option drag it. There it is there, and now it's there, and now it's there. So now if we go back and listen to it with vocals,
Now you don't know me, lightning above and a far below me. You cannot catch me, cannot hold me. You cannot stop, much less control me. When the rains it pours, when the floodgates open, brace your shores. That pressure don't care when it breaks your doors. Say it's all you can take, better take some more. Cause I know what it's like to test me. Have my shoulders placed with that weight. Storing up strong in spite of that hate.
cool. It just kind of lent credence to the vocals too, because the vocals drop off and that piece comes in and kicks it in. All right, cool. That's good for that right there. I'm not going to really mess around with that too much more. We already got an idea of what we got going. Let's go and listen to the bass. So what I want to do is I'm going to hide all parts except for the bass, and that was just a little bass stab. So if I wanted to rename that so we know what it is, we could call it bass stab. I'm going to leave it as is for right now, and let's hide all tracks except for my bass, and that way I can go in and focus on what we're going to do here. Plus, remember, I've got this MIDI track, and just kind of catch you up, last week, we created a virtual instrument track, and we put the plug-in vacuum on there. So if I record arm this, here I've got my virtual instrument vacuum. This is what's creating the sound. So we'll take a look at what we've got on that track. Let's go back and look at the arrange window. And I basically just, to start us off, we didn't really have much time. So what I did was I zoomed into a 1 bar increment here. And I basically was going to try to emulate what they had going as far as their bass line. So if we solo out their bass line, and now there's a lot going on there, and as it turns out, they're really actually using about 3 different synth sounds. So what I did is I basically just pulled up one synth sound for right now. And notice I have one sound there, but oops. Let's change my grid resolution here. Let's get down to 16th notes. That way when I go to move this, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to go up an octave with this sound. And you'll see that it'll kind of give it a very similar sound like they've already got going on the track. So if I want this to go up an octave, I could actually just select the notes and ask it to transpose. Option 0 is going to bring up my MIDI operations window. And then right now, notice I'm just holding down on, oops, I didn't mean to play that. Sorry guys, I just lost my position here. Let's do it like this then. Okay, cool. These last 2 notes, I just want them to go up an octave, so I'll select them. And then I'll show you what I was using for a quick key. Option 0 will always bring up your MIDI operations window, and then Command up and down arrows takes you through all of these windows. But let me show you how to find that in case you don't remember the quick keys. So up here underneath your event menu, you go to event operations, and you see here the most common thing you guys see is quantize. So we could actually say transpose. Now remember, any of these MIDI features that we're showing you, these are only going to work based off of the selection that you have. So in this case, I'm just going to say, well, let's transpose this one piece that's selected there up by 1 octave. Go ahead and apply it. And now we can actually listen to what I've just done. Now, I just chose to go up by an octave just to kind of make it interesting. You guys can do whatever it is you want to do throughout your song. Now, notice we have those notes that happen there. Then we've got a whole series of notes here. And again, I'm probably not going to try to mimic exactly what they've got going on. But if we just go 1 bar at a time, it's not actually too hard to figure out what's going on. And actually figure out how they produce some of these sounds. Let's take a listen to theirs. We'll solo it out. This is a series of 16th notes, and then they go up a step. So I'm going to do something similar, but not do exactly what they did. We'll get out the pencil tool. And actually just going to do every other note. Now, again, I didn't do exactly what they did, but if you actually take a look and listen, it's just basically creating your own bass line that would work within the constraint of what the original performance sounded like. So. And you're more than welcome to do whatever you want with yours. I'm just going to create a couple more transitional periods here, and then we're going to figure out where this should go. We're probably going to leave it in this one spot and use the same information in several other spots. Remember earlier when we actually sat here and we nailed out where the different sections of the song were at? We're going to use that to our advantage by only having to create a couple different bass lines and then put them in the right spot of where they go in the song. Yeah, there's a really good question. Justin Vaughn asks, is there a hotkey to change the grid? Yeah, you guys might have seen me changing the grid without actually having to go up here to change the grid. If you hold down Control Option and you use plus and minus on your numeric keypad, here, I'll zoom in so you guys can see this. Plus and minus on your numeric keypad changes the grid, which is really nice when you're doing quick MIDI work like you saw me just do. So yeah, there are actual quick keys for that. So good questions. Let me just take a little section right here and see what they've got going on. Got another 1-bar section. Let's listen to what they're doing in their composition, and then we'll do something similar. It sounds a lot like the original information that I already worked on over here. So for right now, I'm just going to copy and paste this. Command C, Command V. I'm good to go there. Let's go to the next bar over and see what they got going on there. To make a 1-bar selection, I'm just going to go to my length field up top there. We'll put in 1 bar, Option F to center it, and let's take a listen. So here, basically, they're using a completely different synth for this bass line. Again, you guys can put in whatever you want. I want you guys to be creative. In this case, sorry guys, all I'm going to do here is I'll show you some of the simplest ways that I go and create my bass lines. I already know the root key is going to be here. So throwing in a couple notes there and 16th notes, we'll maybe actually go and try 8th notes. It can't get any simpler than what you're going to see me do here. If you just do every other note. In dance music, this is going to be the basis many times for just getting things started. And then if you want to change your grid to 16th notes, and again, we can see that if we go up an octave here and just pencil in a couple notes. And again, this may not sound super hot, but it still gives you that moving dance movement. And it gives you a little bit of a tension release with a note being up an extra octave. Really simple stuff. You guys have probably heard this in dance music before. Now, if you notice here, I've already got 4 bars. So if I wanted to, I could just say this is my bass line. I could pretty much copy this all the way out throughout the song. Probably not what I would normally want to do. If I had some more time, I'd probably want to create different bass lines throughout the song. In other words, when we get to the bridge section, I know these notes are not going to work because the bridge changes up. But through this section here where we have the chorus chants, I already know this is going to work just by duplicating it out. And there's our bass line. So if we go back and actually take theirs and mute their bass line out and take a quick listen to what we've got going, and I might actually have to turn this up slightly because their bass line is going to be a lot louder than ours. So let's turn ours up a bit. And we'll give it a listen. Now, let me show you another trick that I like to do as well. I'm going to solo out my bass line. I'm going to go back and we'll pull up my kick and my snare and my hat. I'm actually going to solo these guys out too because I want to hear my rhythm with my bass line. Another cool trick I like to do a lot is check this out. Now, I already have a pattern going that I think is pretty cool, but maybe the actual sound itself isn't so hot. Or maybe I want to layer it with another bass sound. Well, go ahead and we'll actually duplicate this track for right now. If I actually right-click on the track name, we can actually duplicate the track. So it'll duplicate everything about the track, the MIDI notes, the plugin that I have on it, everything about it. And you guys will probably remember this from week 1. So here you're seeing some of your materials come back around to haunt you. And for some reason, I don't see my MIDI notes. They're there. They're just down at the bottom. Notice my MIDI notes are still there. So what I could do is we could actually mute out that original track. We'll mute it for right now. And let's just try pulling up a different patch. And then I could actually mix these two together. So let's pull up the vacuum. And since we already have the pattern going, we'll go through and I'm just going to rotate through the actual presets themselves. And that way we'll actually come across what I like to call a happy accident. Here's where you get to see the Bob Ross in me come out. For those of you that don't know who Bob Ross is, he's a painter. He's a pretty well-known painter. He's not alive anymore, but he used to paint these little seascapes and used to talk about happy little trees. Well, in this case, we're going to come across with a happy little accent just by rotating through different presets. You can find your presets up at the top here. I just happen to choose the factory default. But if we go here, we'll go into the bass patches. We'll actually just listen. This will use the same exact the patterns that I created using MIDI. You can see them there, but now using different sounds. I'm just going to use the actual plus and minus sign here, which will basically just rotate through to the next patch. Now, some of these are really, really low. So since we're in the bass patch, what I need to do is I probably need to pitch this up or transpose it up. So option 0 will bring up my MIDI operations window, and then command arrow down. That's weird. It's not working. Not sure why it's not working. I've noticed you can actually change the window from here as well, though. So we'll just say transpose. I'm asking it to go up an octave. We'll apply it, and we'll find it. Some of these sounds now, because we're using a higher register note, will actually sound a little bit more doable. Before, some of these were just basically in the sub frequencies. And again, it's way down on the register. I'm actually going to try transposing it even again. We'll go ahead and apply it, and you can see the notes will actually move up an octave. Now, it actually changed the sound pretty drastically. We're still using a bass patch, but it's going to be used slightly differently. Now you go ahead and you mix that with our other sound here. Basically just gave it a little bit more bottom end. So we go back and we listen to the original one by itself. It's just buzzy sounding. There's really no low end to it. So we go back to our other sound here, and it's kind of giving it that bottom end. Now we also have some other things that we could do here as well, as like on the cutoff here. If I start opening up the cutoff, this bass isn't going to act like a bass as much. It's going to act more like a lead. Now, it's going to be up to you to decide how you actually want this. But yeah, hey, Justin mentioned it's going to need a little bit of EQ to help it blend together. Yeah, you're right. Probably would. In fact, it'd probably benefit if we're going to use one as a subharmonic. But remember, this was a happy accident. I just walked across this one sound. Let's go through and find some other sounds that we could potentially blend together. Sorry about that, guys. Knocking some things off my walls over here. All right, so I'm going to let you guys decide on what it is you want to pick. I think there's one up top here I liked a little bit better. Just gave it a little bit of yeah, blame the bass. That sounds good. Let's see if these mix together very well. All right, cool. Yeah, I'm going to go with that for right now. If we go and put that back in the track, you'll be able to get a better idea. I think it was Justin that mentioned we might want to actually try EQing these together a little bit too. For instance, if this guy right here, let's say we've got bass A, and we're going to call this bass B. If bass B's taking care of all the bottom end, well, then we want to make sure that this other bass isn't actually chewing up bottom end as well. And if that's the case, then we need to go sweep that out. So I'll usually use a one band because I'm only concerned about getting rid of the bottom end. We'll take all that bottom end out. That way, it's not trying to do the job of the other plugin, and we won't get frequency masking as badly. And if that's the case, if this other guy's doing all the bottom end, bass B's doing all the bottom end, then we want to make sure that it's taking care of just the bottom. So we'll go through the EQ, I'll pull out the one band, and here we will do a low pass. And let's actually just listen to that real quick and see what it sounds like. The other cool thing is since we're blending these together, you don't actually have to have every single note happening at the same time. So it might not be a bad idea to actually alternate some of these sounds to where we actually take the low end out on some of these. So maybe on some of these 16th notes, we'll get rid of it there. We'll get rid of it there. Maybe just get rid of it there. That way it's happening in just a couple different spots and not all the same exact notes are being played. The idea is that they start basically almost doing what you would consider note switching. Not exactly, but you get the idea. So you can actually hear what part's starting to do what. Now, for right now, I'm going to leave this as is because I have some other really cool things I want to show you guys. For instance, on some of the vocal pieces, you may have heard a thing called reverse reverb happening on vocals. So I kind of want to show you how some of that stuff is done because it's some of the cooler kind of daft tricks that you can only do inside of a DAW. And in the days of tape, you just simply could not pull this off. So if that's the case, let's go to the lead vocal track. I'm actually going to hide everything except for the lead vocals for right now. Now, by the way, we're kind of walking away from dealing with the bass entirely, but what I really wanted to do is this should have, we actually should be using this in different parts of the song. So for right now, we're actually just going to use it as is. Typically, I'd probably write something different for this section and for this section. I'm definitely not going to be using that for the bridge because it's going to be using completely different notes. But a couple of other things I might want to show you as well while we're here before we just totally abandon talking about the bass is that these two sections, if they're going to be used together, it might not be a bad idea to go look at them in clips. And notice now you're looking at them in bigger chunks of information. So I'll go over here and we'll change it from notes to clips. And I'll select both of them. And here's another feature that you guys may have seen from one of your PTA assignments is that we want to turn them into a region group. Command Option G. And that way they are basically pasted together. So anytime I go to move these, I'm going to go ahead and put myself in 1 bar increments and then just option drag with the grabber tool to put this where it should go. Notice since I already created these markers, you can see that's where it needs to go. I'm just following where the original baseline used to be. There you go. That's what we use for right now. Maybe at the end of the song, looks like there's a couple extra bars there. So maybe just out of being creative, we'll just duplicate these 2 bars to finish out the song. Again, I have no idea what that sounds like. I probably want to go back and listen to it, but you can see just visually, because we created those markers, we're able to kind of just drop in parts where the song should go. And that was another important key feature of creating those markers. We already know where the sections of the song are at, so now we know where to actually populate portions of the song based off of just a visual clue of the markers themselves. Okay, coolio. Let's get back over to the vocals real quick. I want to show you guys some stuff with vocals. So I got the lead vocal track here. Let's look at the rap vocals, and we got the background vocals. So we've got all these vocals happening in the song, and I want to show you guys how they create some of these ghosts effects. So let's take a listen to the rap. Here's the beginning of the song. If I want to create a cool lead-in to this rap, I want to show you how to create a reverse reverb. We'll go ahead and we'll listen to the very first couple words he says in this section.
Now you don't know me.
So we're going to take the word now. I'm going to take that word now and we're going to do some pretty interesting stuff to it. First of all, let's actually take a look at that in grid mode. So I'll go to 16th notes and we'll use the first 2/16 or basically the first 8 notes. Now he doesn't exactly come in right where he should. It's not exactly to grid, but that's okay. We're going to end up using this just as is anyways. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new stereo track right below it. Because right below it, we're actually going to use that information. I'm going to cut this out. So I'm going to separate it. Actually, let's listen to that and see exactly what it says. So now you is basically what it says. I'm going to leave the original there, but we're going to cut it out and pull it down. So option dragging it. And we're going to reverse it, and we're going to add some reverb to it as well. So first I'm going to go underneath Audio Suite, go down to Other. I'm going to ask for this to be reversed. Render it. Cool. It's now reversed. Good. Sounds good. And now let's apply a really nice big long reverb to it. So that big reverb, when I say big, we're going to do a pretty big verb here. Let's see. Let's tell Pro Tools that we want a full 1 bar and 720 ticks. 1 bar and 720 ticks. And that's a pretty substantial reverb. And let's try to pull up a reverb plugin. Let's see. Instead of reverse, we'll go underneath reverb. And I'll pick Deverb since you guys all have Deverb. I want to pick something you have. And you know what? I think I'm going to make this yeah, we'll just stick with 1 bar for right now. I may decide to make this bigger here in a moment. But we'll use a HARL. That sounds good. I'll go ahead and just render this out. We'll see how big that tail is. Now, notice the tail isn't real big. I actually was looking for something a little bit bigger than that. And when I say the tail, a reverb should have a tail to it. So if we were to zoom in, take a look at this, you can see there is quite a bit of a tail, but it's not really as big as I wanted it to be. I want it to be a little bit bigger. So we'll make the decay a lot larger, 28 seconds. We'll create no diffusion. There we go. And I'll render it out. All right, now that's a reverb. Now we've got some tail on it. In fact, I'm actually going to go back and create a fade out on it, but this is going to get reversed back again. So this is basically going to end up being, it's basically going to be an intro. So if we sew this out and you want to hear what this sounds like, it's going to sound weird because it's actually backwards, but
now you don't know me.
Let's all right, real nice long reverb to it. We go and we actually reverse that. Audio Suite, Other, Reverse, and render this out. Cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this right back underneath it, right where it originally was, and now this will create a real ghostly effect coming into that word. I'll go ahead and solo this out so you can kind of get an idea of what we're talking about here. And we'll play it on.
Now you don't know me.
And notice it was a little bit quiet too, so let's put some gain on it. We can actually boost it up. Now, if you're using Pro Tools 10 or above, you already have clip gain based right in the plugin. I'm sorry, right in the region itself. And what this really is it's left over from the gain plugin from your Audio Suite. It's basically a real-time version of this. We go to Audio Suite and we go to Other, we should find gain. it's basically this little plugin right here, but it's just sitting there with this little small fader. So if I ever want anything to be louder inside of Pro Tools, I can simply just turn it up by using that feature. Now here's where I get a little bit scared. We've got a pinwheel, and sometimes this will be called the pinwheel of death. Oh, not good. Well, hopefully I saved somewhere in that work, because I have a feeling that we just lost any and all of our work. That was a full-on Pro Tools crash. Oh, let's hope I saved my work. Yeah, so that's not optimal to actually have your Pro Tools session completely crash on you the way you guys just saw. Um, but that's the reality of the beast. Sometimes these things happen. Let's go back and let's take a look here. Justin Vaughn actually brought up a good point, but unfortunately, I don't think I actually have that feature turned on. I can go back and actually look, but yeah, this is the way I left the session from last week. So we just lost basically 35 minutes worth of work. Is it completely a waste? No, because I can go back and reconstruct that pretty quickly and easily. Fortunately, I can remember most of what I just did. What Justin was actually talking about, though, is if we go back, there actually is a feature. These I had already created on my own. Let's take a look at our session file backups. Okay, great. I actually had it engaged. I wasn't sure if I did or not. Let's take a look at. This actually might be good for this evening. Let's get some more information about when these were saved. And notice that they are numbered sequentially based off of when I used them last. Let's actually take a look at this 811. I think this is when we crashed tonight. Let's take a look. Cool. So we didn't lose too much work. We lost maybe 5 minutes worth of work. And actually, Justin, I'm glad you brought that up. That was actually a really good idea. So basically, all I did is go look in my auto saves, and we were all good. So the only thing we lost was that render that I did. So all I did was I had 2 bars and 720 ticks worth of information selected. And then I went in and we went under Audio Suite. I pulled up my reverb, pulled up deverb, gave it a very long reverb of about, I think it was 24 seconds or something along those lines. Turned off the diffusion, went ahead and rendered it down, saved it. We'll go ahead and save this as version 6. Cool. And I'm going to go ahead and render that. Actually, it looks like we already rendered it. If I turn it up. Yeah, nice long reverb there. Cool. So then we'll go back. We'll create a fade out, which is going to end up being a fade in for this section. Save my work again and reverse it. Audio Suite, other, reverse, render. So basically, we're just going to be popping this right into place here. And so if we go back and listen now, we just basically gave it a ghostly effect coming into that vocal piece.
know me. Like.
So that's the old reverse reverb for vocals, and it's something that I like to use, especially it works good at the beginning of a song or any time that you have something that has a really impactful situation. Okay, anybody have questions about reverse reverbs? Yeah, reverse reverbs are really good. Now you don't have to do this with just vocals either. We could have done this on bass lines as well. I'll probably need to go back and reconstruct our bass line, but for right now, I'm going to leave it as is, only because we've got some more things that I want to be able to show you guys. Like, how about delays off sections of songs as well? I'd like to see what the very last word is within this rap section here and give that a delay as well, because that'll lead into the chorus line. Let's go and take a listen to the phrasing that happens here.
Night gets darkest right before dawn. What don't kill you makes you more strong. And I've been waiting for it so long.
Well, you can hear they've already got their own delay going on, but I did like the word strong, and I thought that word strong could have used a little bit more delays as well. So let's go show you how we could do that.
What don't kill you makes you more strong.
So strong, here's the word strong.
Strong, strong, strong.
I got the word strong, and the cool thing about this is because we have the grid already mapped out, notice that it just grabs that immediately. So let's show you some time-based automation. First of all, we need to show you how to set up time-based effects. A time-based effect is always going to utilize a send, and it's always going to be using a send that will go to an aux track. So let's create a stereo aux track. And on the stereo aux input, we're going to name this delay. I'm going to put my delay plugin on this track. So we'll go over here to my delay section. We'll go down to extra long delay, stereo 2. And I'm going to set one side up to be a whole note, the other side to be set up as a half note. And I think my session just closed again. Wow, that's scary. All right. Well, I apologize, guys. This doesn't usually happen. Let's go take a look where it's at. Linkin Park, the light that never comes. Fortunately, I got back to version 6, but let's see if there's anything else that's saved beyond that. Okay, cool. We got our reverse vocal, so we did save that work. Awesome. So I wanted to actually do a delay on the word strong. So I believe we're somewhere in the neighborhood of here. I just need to go back and find that word again.
What don't kill you makes you more strong.
I believe we're here and strong.
Strong, strong, strong.
Cool. So basically, I want to go ahead and save my work. I'm just going to get in the habit of doing Command S a whole bunch tonight. And we'll fight through this. We'll be able to get through it. By the way, the feature that Cameron had mentioned earlier for creating auto backups, you can find that underneath Setups menu if you go to your Preferences. Under Operation here, you can actually set up your auto backup. You can tell it how often to do that and how often to keep. So let's actually have it do every single minute. Whenever I find that I'm getting to be really unstable in the performance of Pro Tools, you want to make sure it's saving very, very often. That way you don't have to go back and redo, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes worth of work, because you guys understand time is money. Cool. So let's call this Vox Effect track, since we have effects going on it. Excellent. And we're going to actually be using a delay on that one little bit there. So what we're going to need to do is create a stereo aux track. We'll call this delay. We'll put a delay plugin on that track. So we're going to go we'll use standard DigiDesign. I want to make sure I'm using the same stuff you guys have. Extra long delay, that works for me. Here's where we lost communication last time. Whole note versus half note. I want to make sure you turn up the feedback. If you don't turn up the feedback, it's only going to happen once and then stop. So you actually want this to, the feedback to be turned up. That way you can actually hear it continue on. Now, a natural delay, the high-end content will actually get filtered off. So if you use a slow-pass filter, you'll find that your delays will sound a whole lot more natural. And this is already following your session's tempo based off of, if you don't want it to follow your session's tempo, you can just turn this off, but it's already going to be naturally following the tempo. Now, the only thing I have to do, only thing I have left to do is really kind of route this. So we're going to set the input for my aux track to be an available bus. We'll use 11 and 12. You can see any buses that are already in use will be colored in amber, so I know that I can't use that. It's already in use. I can pick 3 and 4 if I want to. I'm just simply going to pick 11 and 12. Now make sure that you're matching the same send. So if I'm going to send, we'll send on bus 11 and 12 as well. Now what I want to do is automate on just that one portion where he says the word strong, only because it rhymes with the word long, which is the very last word he says. So we're going to actually go ahead and delay this. So to delay this on this particular channel, on the vocal channel where we have the send, we'll view the sends here so you can see it. Since A through E, there's the send that I just created. I want to automate that send level. So here we have the send, there's the level. Since I know what the word is, all I have to do is basically automate that one word. So we'll go ahead and create some automation breakpoints, turn it up, and now that particular word will have the delay effect on it. So we'll go ahead and listen.
Night gets darkest right before dawn. What don't kill you makes you more strong. And I've been waiting for it so long.
Now you guys actually aren't hearing it because if you take a look down on my delay track, I didn't actually have that soloed. Anytime you have a delay track like that, you want to go ahead and make it solo saved. So if you hold down Command and click on the solo button, it'll solo. You can still see there's signal there, so I know it actually did reach its destination. You just couldn't hear it because we had other tracks soloed out.
Night gets darkest right before dawn. What don't kill you makes you more strong. And I've been waiting for it so long.
Now, if we wanted that to continue even further, I could have actually automated this out a little bit further as well. Or we actually could have taken that word, if we want to actually print that down, I could have actually done similar to you saw me do with the reverse reverb. So what we'll do is I'll just delete this automation. By the way, just to kind of show you what happened right there, is when it went through that section, the actual send level, which is on this track, this send actually got automated to turn up. So if I were to focus your attention in on that, you'll see here that whenever it gets to the section, it actually automates the send level.
Night gets darkest right before dawn. What don't kill you makes you more strong. And I've been waiting for it so strong.
And you can actually hear it's strong as they're automated in the background. You can see it happening on this lower channel at the bottom. Again, if I didn't want to have it work in that fashion, if I wanted to cut that out, we could do that as well. So in other words, if we change from our automation view here, so we'll get out of this. We'll go back over to waveform. And here's the word strong. But it looks like I'm missing a little bit of the S here too. So what I want to do is actually want to go back over into slip mode. We want to get the beginning of the S. Cool. We'll trim this out, Command E. And then if I hold down Control, notice Control almost acts like you're in grid mode. I'm in slip mode, but Control will make it, pulls it down and keeps it in the exact same reference. So we'll undo that. If I hold Option Control, it'll actually copy it. So now with that copy, I can then determine how often I want that to repeat. So if I want that to repeat every 1 bar increment, well then I can choose when I want that to happen. you have something inside Pro Tools called relative grid mode. We've talked about grid before, but we haven't talked about relative grid. Notice if I go to move this around, standard grid mode makes it snap to the beginning. Well, that's not actually how it was. If we keep it relative to its current grid location, you can see the beginning of this file is actually slightly off grid. Well, that's where relative grid mode comes into play, because if we go into relative grid mode, when I got to move this around, it'll actually keep it in its current location, but relative to its current grid location. So if I go and change this to 1-bar increments, and then if I want this off axis of the grid, notice I'll move it. Let's actually move it, we'll say half notes here. Notice when I go to move it, it didn't put it right on the grid. It left it off axis of the grid, just like you saw it before. So if that's the case, I can option drag it, and we'll be creating this delay, and at the same time keeping it off axis of the grid, but that way it basically lands where it should land in the song. And in doing this, then I can then consolidate this together, and I've just created my own delay, but I've created a delay by pasting it out. Now, why would I do this? Do that, I missed that. Option drag. Well, if I want each one of these to have their own little spin, I could put some distortion on each little individual hit here, and that way each and every one of these delays could actually sound different. So basically, I just created my own automated delay. In fact, let's do that. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but this would allow me to pitch some of them up as well. For instance, if we keep the word on the very same word, like you see, this is the original word. If we keep it here and here, you're actually going to end up doubling up on the frequencies. So you actually want to get rid of the first one. And I'm going to leave these alone because they're actually in the middle of words. But here we see that he starts to get off of actually singing. Here's where we're going to start to actually adjust these. So here I'll go to my audio suite, and we'll use pitch shift, and we'll bring up our pitch shift plugin. And I'm just going to say, okay, we'll start off, and we'll go up 2 semitones, render it. We'll go 2 more to 4 semitones, render it. Go to the next one, go up to 6 semitones, render it. The next one, 8 semitones, render. So I'm only going to do this till we get up to an octave. We'll get this 10 semitones, render it, 12 semitones. So that's basically an octave. Render it. And here's where you can have fun with it. Because again, remember, it's just a delay, so you can do whatever you want to it. At this point, we could start pitching back down. So how about we go down in semitones? So we'll go down 2 semitones, render, go to the next one, down 4 semitones, render. I'm going to kind of keep doing this. I believe I stopped off, and I'll show you how I can figure this out. If you zoom in on the file itself, you can see any of these that I've rendered. It actually gives to the name of the file itself. It lets me see that I have pitch shifted. So I pitch shift that one as well. This one as well. So here's the very last one that I haven't pitch shift yet. But let's get back over here and paste some of these out. I'm just going to option drag. And remember, I'm still in relative grid mode, and this is just allowing me to add my own creative delays to what's happening in the song. Let me see where we... Did anyone pay attention to how far I'd gotten up? Well, I was at 4, so I need to be at 6 on this one. Render. Select this one. Go to 8. Render. A couple more times. This one we're going to do at 10. Render. This one we'll do at 12. So we've gone down a complete octave now. Render. And then these last ones, we'll just have fun with them. For instance, how about doing a little bit of time stretching to them? So TCE, time compression expansion. Oops. That was a little bit big. And that had to do with, let's go to our slip mode, stretch it. How about we'll do the same thing with this next one, but not only will we stretch it out, check this out. If I actually hold down Control and I go to stretch it, notice it actually, wrong feature. I think it's Control Command. There we go. Notice it actually take me right up to the file, but won't allow me to go into the file. And that way I can go down to Audio Suite, go down to Pitch Shift. We'll use Verify this time. And I'll render it. And that Verify, this gets kind of cool. It'll be like, strong. Give it that record effect. And on that one, I pitched it down. But how about on the next one? Oops, let's undo that. I hold down Control Command. We stretch it all the way up to this file. But this time, instead of having it slow down, we'll have it speed up. And then I'll render it. You can hear it goes. And how about we'll do something similar for this next file. I'll select it. We'll go to stretch it. Again, so I don't overlap the file, I'm going to hold down Control Command so that when I go to stretch the file, it doesn't actually overlap. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Control Command. There you go. Notice it doesn't allow me to go into the file. But then we can do a cool little gated effect where if I send it to 30-second notes, this will, and then I'll go and delete every other note. And this will give it that kind of cool gated effect. Make sure I'm back into absolute grid mode. Trying to see where my hardcore grid's at already. So we want to get rid of that one. So basically, I'm just going to get rid of every other note. And then remember, it was off axis of the grid already a little bit. Oops. So here I just took the very last word that he was saying and I gave it my own little kind of artistic spin on it. So let's give you an idea of what it sounds like. Now you're also hearing some pops because I hardcore edited into the waveform itself. And to get rid of those pops, we'll just highlight over it, Command F to fade. Let's create 5 millisecond crossfades across these, and that'll get rid of the pops, but it'll still keep it sounding rhythmic. Now, if we go back and we'll take a look at these delays that I just created, and let's go ahead and just listen to what it sounds like. I actually want to get rid of the volume automation that I did earlier, because remember, I kind of just created my own, but I did it with hardcore edits. And that way I can apply my own little effects to each of the edits.
You makes you more strong, and I've been waiting for it so long. Strong.
One other thing we could actually do to this as well. Now, I'd probably want to fade them out a little bit. Notice they were all the same volume. A lot of times your delays, you're probably not going to want your delays to be all the same exact volume as the original playback was. Once you start really time stretching stuff, we'll use our TCE tool and stretch this as far as it'll let me go. And now this algorithm is dependent on which plugin you actually currently are using. So if I go to my setup menu and I go to my preferences, you actually guys, if you look under your processing, you guys will have two different ones. The factory default is what you want to look under here. And I typically have been using Xform. You guys have Digidesign TCE, and you also have Time Shift. These are the two that come with Pro Tools. Xform is really expensive. It's about $500 last time I checked. It might have come down in price. That's typically what I use, but it doesn't allow me to stretch quite as far, but it does make it sound accurate. Whenever we use this TCE plugin, you are kind of doing some destructive processes to the file. But here we've really stretched that word out, and here's where we might want to just do some kind of a weird effect to it, maybe the gated effect. But if you take a listen now. And there's where you might even want to apply like another delay to that as well, or do whatever you want to it. But just giving you guys some creative ideas. I tell you what, one other thing I do want to show to you guys is I want to show you guys time-based routing and dealing with reverbs. We showed you it with a delay, but let's show it to you with reverb as well, because these are the two things you're going to be using time-based routing with. It's reverbs and delays. That's about it. Anything else, most of your other plugins, you're just going to be routing like you would traditional dynamic plugins right on the track itself. So make sure on your project, anytime you're using reverbs and delays, make sure you're using sends and sending that signal over to the track itself. So let's actually use that as an example again, just so you guys will remember how that's done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hide all tracks except for the lead vocal track, and let's actually apply some reverb to the lead vocals. So we'll create a stereo aux track again. Stereo aux input track, we'll call it verb. And notice that I hit all tracks. I hit all tracks so that you guys don't get confused on what it is I'm doing. It kind of allows you to center in on what's going on. Let me actually save my work again, make sure we don't crash the system because I'm about to pull up some more plugins. And let's go ahead and let's route this. So let's put up our reverb. We'll set it up as a reverb. We'll use deverb since you guys all have deverb. We will use a plate. And I believe there's already some settings too, some preferences for vocals. So notice here we've got short plate 2. Let's try that out. I'm going to go ahead and route this now. So we'll look at any available bus that we have. We will use, let's see, 11 and 12 is already used. So how about using 9 and 10? So if we're going to route the vocals on that bus, it'll be out 9 and 10. And then now we've got them basically routed. I just turned up the send. So this turned up a copy of the signal that's coming over to land on this reverb. The dry path is still going out of the output of this original track, but now we have a second copied signal going over to our aux track. This is how you would route all of your time-based effects. If I go and find a portion of the song to give you an example of what this is like, this basically just puts that person in a room. So let's try the chorus. What I'm going to do is put myself in 1 bar increments, and we'll just grab the chorus section. Let's get rid of our TCE for right now. And let's put on the Smart Tool, and we'll just make a selection across this one chorus section here. So if you go back and you just listen to just this by itself, by the way, the solo safe is control click, command click. And that way when I turn this up, you'll hear this. But let's go back and we'll just listen to the dry vocals by themselves for a second so you get an idea of what it is that we're dealing with. Now there's already a bit of reverb already pasted to his vocals, but if we go and we turn up the reverb, you'll hear as soon as I stop playback, you'll hear his vocals continue to reverberate around the space of a room. And if I turn up the actual decay, it'll sound like he's in a larger room. It takes longer for the reverberant material to stop and not fade out. Now, that's all based off of this send level right here. If I want more reverb, we can turn it up. He's probably going to start sounding like he's in a cave here at some point. And you can hear the decay happen at the end of his vocals. So that's basically how you're always going to want to set up your time-based effects. A couple more things to kind of wrap up. I showed you guys some creative editing. I've shown you some automation inside of Pro Tools. I've shown you how to create your own edited automations. That way you can actually make each one of those delays sound a little bit different. Now I actually want to show you how to create an audio subgroup. And the audio subgroup that we're going to work on here is going to be dealing with the drums. I've got 3 of my drums tracks going on down here. So let's show you those tracks. I've got my kick, my snare, and my hat. And you guys saw these earlier. I recorded these out just basically from a pattern that we created out of Expand. So the cool thing about this is right now I already have them set up as an edit and mix group. That way if I turn up one fader, they all get turned up so we can hear the drums. Now, what I want to show you though is an audio subgroup. Once I start getting my tracks down into, basically, at some point in your song, you're going to have so many faders. Like if we're trying to mix and everything looks like this, it's a lot of different faders to try to mix off of. What I'm about to show you is going to help cut down on the number of faders and help you kind of organize your mix into a more congealed a meal so that you could actually get things mixed down and be able to see them without having every single fader in front of your face. So to do that, if I control click, you're just going to see the members of, sorry about that. If I control click on this group, you're just going to see the members of that group. It'll hide everything else on screen. So what I want to do now is I want to create an audio subgroup, which will basically pipe all of these tracks over into one specific track. So I'm going to create a stereo aux track, and we're going to call this percussion sub. So I'll name it perc sub, P-E-R sub. In this percussion sub, I'm actually going to pipe all of these tracks out over into this track. So we're going to go ahead and route all of them out. If I hold down Shift and Option, it'll clutch these tracks. We'll go use any available bus. So I see that 15 and 16 is wide open. Notice because I'm holding Shift and Option and those tracks names were highlighted, it clutched those tracks and it also routed all of their outputs out of bus 15 and 16. Now all I have to do is route the input for this track to be bus 15 and 16. And now this one track alone, it controls basically all of those members. So in the eventuality of once I get the song down to just my vocals, my keyboards, my bass, and my drums, I can sit here and I can basically mix the entire song off a couple faders and not have to have every fader flying in my face and trying to basically confuse me while I'm trying to get my mix done. Does everybody understand what just happened? So basically I bust the output of all of these tracks, just my percussions. And you might actually want to rename these as well. So if I right click here, we could rename this bus path. We'll call it perc sub. Excellent. Awesome. Cool. A couple other things that I want to show you guys before we wrap up tonight. We've only got a couple minutes left here, and that is this. Let's take a look here. Notice off in here in my clip bin, I've got all these different little clips because remember I'm doing all these little crazy edits. Shift Command U will basically select anything that's not being used in my session. So everything that I see right here is potentially material. Well, I know it's material that's not being used in the session. So here's my session. In fact, we'll narrow my session down a little bit. We'll double click on the magnifying glass, shrink all my tracks down, so we'll see my session real nice and neat. By the way, everybody see what just happened? You can be zoomed in, way in, far into your session. If you double click on your magnifying glass, it will zoom you out and show you everything in your session. And then all I did was just resize my tracks so that I can see every track real small, but I'm looking at everything that's going on in my session. All these little pieces over here in my clips bin, these are not being used in my session. So if you send me this, this could be like several gigs big, but I don't need all of this. So in fact, let's go see how big this session is. I go back and take a look. Here's my Linkin Park. Command I will give me information about this session. Okay, not too bad. It's 549.2 megabytes. So it's not really super huge, but let's go ahead and let's create an archive of this. Let's go ahead and we'll do File, Save Copy In. I'll check off all audio files. And I'm going to send this to my desktop. Let's take the word copy of off of this. Let's send it to my desktop. And let's save it. So basically this is creating an archive. It's copying every single file that's in use in my session, including, for right now, including files that I'm not even using. Now, once I have this archive, I'm going to go back and open up this archive that's being copied for me right now, and we're going to delete this extraneous information. So I don't need you guys to send me this stuff. Yeah, it's still going to be way too big for FSO, but you're going to be cutting down on my time that I have to download your projects as well if you just delete the unused portions. Plus, you're going to get counted off if you don't. So I'm actually trying to show you guys the highest missed items on the project. So hint, hint, wink, wink. Time-based routing, real biggie. A lot of people missed that one, so that's why I did it twice today. and I'm always getting people sending me files that has unused portions. So right now I'm in the old version. Let's close that old version. Let's go open up my new version here. My new version should be on my desktop. Here's Lincoln Park. There it is. Let's go ahead and open the session. Now, the other big thing that a lot of students get marked off on is sending me files that have a lot of silence in them. So first of all, Shift-Command-U selects all unused portions. If you don't remember the quick key, that's okay. What you just saw me do is basically a function that is used in your clips menu. So if you go to your clips menu and you have this function to select, and then you have unused. So I did see there's the quick key, Shift-Command-U, and it selected all this unused pieces. And then I want to delete it, Shift-Command-B. And I'll show you here, it's basically just another clip menu item. So clear, Shift-Command-B. Now when you go to clear, you have the option of deleting or remove. If you remove it, it removes it from the regions list, but it's still in your audio files folder, so I want you to actually delete it. But this is why I actually created a copy of this first. That way I actually have a separate copy of this. So we're going to delete, and we're going to say yes. All right, cool. So this actually should have made my session considerably smaller. Let's go take a look. So here's the session here, and not considerably smaller, but definitely smaller. Now, another thing that students are typically missing a whole bunch on is sending me sessions that have a lot of dead silence in them. So I don't need all this dead silence. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into half bar increments. The only reason I'm doing half bar is all this information from here back, I don't need it. In between these two guys here, from here to here, Shift Tab, oops, let's go back. Put myself here. Let's turn tab to transient on, Shift Tab, don't need it, delete it. Same thing here. Shift Tab, delete it. Same thing here. Just actually be careful here, because if you look, I'm actually cutting into that waveform. Let's do it from there. Shift Tab, don't need it. Actually, be careful on this one as well. There's a little lead in where it's probably going to be a breath. See that breath? I don't like cutting off breaths. I like to keep them, so try not to cut off breaths. Again, I'm just guessing, but I have a pretty good idea. He's about to sing, and he's taking a breath right before he talks. Anytime you take away those breaths, some producers like to take them away. I think it sounds really unnatural. I kind of like to use breaths. In fact, sometimes I'll use them even rhythmically in the song, especially on a dance track like we're looking at here. So if that's the case, I could even take that breath. Let me go back and make my grid resolution a little bit smaller. Yeah, I'll use that, absolutely. So we'll take this and let me see where we're at here. I will use this. It's happening there. So I know we could do it there. I know we could do it there. And at this point, I'm just creating a pattern here. So it's going to be up to you however you want to create this breath pattern. It's just creating breath. I mean, if we listen to it, and it's drenched in reverb because I remember I had that send cranked way up. I've heard BT. I don't know if any of you guys are a fan of BT. I've heard BT even doing things like this, duplicating them out, bam, and then if we create a little fade in, so I'll then consolidate it, create a fade in. This actually gets really interesting. Check this out. So yeah, so I actually like to keep breaths. Keep the breaths, but get rid of any dead silence. Shift Tab, and be careful getting rid of information that you may need. Like some of that, I'm going to keep, delete it. So it's just another thing that I get from a lot of students is I get sessions. They're sending me megabytes and megabytes worth of information that is just dead air. I don't need it. There's no point in giving it to me. Now, what you're probably thinking is, John, well, didn't you just show us that you were getting rid of all these unused portions in your session, and now you got a bunch more? Yeah, I do, but it's just a lesson learned here to show you guys that you don't need to send me all this dead air. So Shift-Command-U, yeah, now I have all these extra extraneous pieces. I want you to do that on every single track. I don't have the time to do this for you this evening, but Shift-Command-U, get rid of these unused portions. Shift Command B, delete them. Now, it probably didn't make our session any smaller because I could trim this back out and then information would still be there. Well, there's another feature inside of Pro Tools to help you get rid of stuff like that too. Remember, I only did that on one track for right now. I want you guys to do it on every single track. I mean, there's a bunch of other tracks here that have a lot of dead silence. Let's take a look. Here's some dead silence. There's dead silence at the very beginning of all these files. There's a lot of dead silence. So get rid of all this. Now, once you do this, you're going to want to do compact selected. What does compact selected do? Well, here's what it really does. If let me actually go back and try to clean some of these up real quick. It's going to take me quite a while to go back and clean everything up, but actually, let me just show you what compact selected does for right now. Basically, compact selected, what you want to do is you want to select every file in your session. So every file in my session, after I've gone back and cleaned it up, every file is now trimmed down so you have all that dead air gone. Because I don't need, look at this. This one file doesn't have anything going on until you get right here, almost the end of the song or the bridge section of the song. I don't need any of that. So you're sending me megabytes and megabytes worth of information that is not getting used to basically the end of the song. So again, you would do this for every single file in the song. Just because we don't have enough time to do this together this evening, I'm going to expect that you guys will do this on your own. But then after you've done this, you want to use compact selected. Hit return, Command A, so select everything in your session, every single file, and they're going to compact these. Compacting selected any unused portions that are no longer in use, it's going to trim them down and get rid of them. So it's also going to ask you for some padding. The padding is, well, what if I actually cut into one of those breaths, but I wanted it to be there? Well, the padding would allow me to go back and retrim out. It would actually go ahead and say, okay, I know you want to get rid of a lot of this information, but leave, if I say 500 milliseconds, well, that's half a second. Leave half a second on each file. That way, if I accidentally did cut into a file, I could actually go back and trim that back out, and that information would be there. I'm going to go ahead and leave mine for the default, so it'll give me a full 1 second, so 1,000 milliseconds, and then we'll ask it to compact. Shouldn't take mine for very long. Or in this case, it might actually take a little while. Justin had said you could use strip silence. You've got to be really careful with strip silence, though, because it will cut out anything that it sees that was under a threshold level. And so just be careful. Strip silence will actually render some of your files useless if it cuts into them or gets rid of portions that it didn't understand. In other words, strip silence is going to go back and actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and just use it real quick. I'll kind of give you an example here. So let's use strip silence here. So, the quick key for strip silence is Command U. Notice you have your strip silence window. And it actually works based off of a threshold. So if we go and you turn your thresholds way down, and we go back into our waveform view. Now, what this is going to do, if I go ahead and hit strip, I already have an audio selection. Okay. Looks like it's going to be dodgy with me tonight. Okay, with strip silence, let me actually zoom my waveform down slightly. In this example, you have a strip threshold, which it's going to see the amount of volume that you are using, and then you've got a duration. So it's basically, you do have pad time for the start and end on strip silence, and it kind of works kind of similar to what we were just looking at. But then again, I like to just go ahead and eyeball it and actually do that as a physical edit instead of using strip silence. Strip silence, unless you get really used to how it works, you could actually end up cutting into files when you didn't mean to, or getting rid of files that you weren't sure of. I actually will usually go track by track and use tab to transient or even tab to region start or region end to figure out if I really needed that or really not. So just be careful with strip silence. If you're used to it, great. If you're not, then it can actually do you more harm than good. Well, guys, I appreciate you guys coming out tonight. I know we did have a couple technical difficulties, and we definitely experienced a couple crashes, but I hope that kind of got you guys inspired in a couple ways and showed you some techniques that maybe you were aware of, or maybe you weren't aware of, or you've heard it before, you weren't sure how it was done, and hopefully that kind of gave you some food for thought on things that you guys can do in your own project. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for the next couple minutes here for any questions you guys might have. So any questions? Cliff Owens, that's a good question. You'd actually have to have a DigiDesign authorized product. You'll notice that some DAWs will allow you to use your faders on a controller to actually control volume. DigiDesign does not. They actually want to sell you one of their own controllers, so you'd actually have to have a certified product that is guaranteed to work. Like there's a project Mix.io that will work with both Pro Tools and Logic. Of course, there's the 002 or 003 family that has dedicated control flying faders. There's also the Yukon control surfaces, but outside of that, you'd actually have to buy an authorized product for doing automation with your faders. Good question, though, and it's a question a lot of people have. Hey, not a problem, guys. Don't worry. There will be. I will have this archived, so I know I kind of threw a lot at you guys here for our session, and I showed you a lot of different little techniques. But this will be there for you in the archive, so that way, in the event that you didn't remember exactly how something was done, go back and you can reference that archive. Yeah, not a problem, Cliff, and I'm sure a lot of other people have the same question. Yeah, not a problem, guys. Bernard, you don't have to commit all of your MIDI data over to audio, but if you're using a third-party plugin or anything outside of Pro Tools, you'll have to because I may or may not have that product. Justin, you're more than welcome to download them. There is a video downloader called, I believe it's called Mac X. It will allow you to download any video on YouTube. So I'm not sure if it's really an authorized product or not, but I know that I've used it in the past for hijacking somebody else's video. And typically I usually hijack their video because I want to get something out of the audio out of it. But it's called Mac X. Hey Cameron, I'd love to show you sidechain. Unfortunately, I just don't have time, but there's tons of videos for sidechaining on YouTube. So unfortunately, we've just run out of time, and it's something I'm not requiring you guys to do in your project. So I've really kind of just stuck tonight with showing you guys things that you have to do in your project, and actually everything I've showed you guys is really the most highly missed items on your project as well. Yeah, Bernard, if you're using a Pro Tools plugin, you don't have to commit it to memory. I'm sorry, to to audio, because I'll have it. All right, guys. Yeah, I really had a good time tonight, and I appreciate you guys coming out. And I will look forward to checking out your projects. It's coming this Sunday evening. You guys have a great night, and hopefully I don't see you guys back next month. If you do, that's okay too, and that just means that we'll hang out a little bit longer. But I hope that you guys go on to be successful in whatever it is you want to do in life. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to hit me up. Even if you've gone beyond this class, I'd love to hear from you guys. And more than anything, I love hearing about your successes in life. So if you're running into some weird problem, you don't know how to get past it, give me a buzz, and we'll chat and get you where you need to be, And have a good time, guys. Take care. Good night.